Hello and welcome to this very special interview today with world-renowned German architect and one of the CEOs of Graft, Lars Krückeberg. It's an honor for me personally to be speaking to you, and thank you first of all for taking the time to speak to us.
Sure. Volentieri.
Volentieri. Speaking of volentieri, so we're here in Rome, in Italy, and although your fame precedes you as a very famous architect around the world, maybe not many people know that you speak very good Italian. Why is that?
I wouldn't say it's very good, it's okay. Ho studiato a Firenze, ma tanti anni fa, 26 anni fa infatti, ho studiato a Firenze, così ho imparato la lingua, che mi piace un mondo, perché non si può vivere in Italia senza parlare la lingua. È un altro paese se sai parlare italiano. Così, I needed to learn the language. I love the language. I think it's probably the most beautiful language, above French, in the world. No, because it's also a language where you express yourself with everything.
So you learnt it in Florence 26 years ago. Since then, have you lived in Italy at all?
No. I came back whenever I could because I really like being in Italy and seeing, understanding, studying. But I hadn't had the chance to live here again. I actually went abroad after my studies with my friends to Los Angeles, and we started our architectural office in Los Angeles in 1908. And we opened an office in Berlin in 2001, an office in China, in Beijing in 2004. So yeah, I traveled a lot and I lived in different places, most of the time actually in Los Angeles. I lived there till 2011. My home is Berlin right now, but I have several homes that I had the luck to experience, and that doesn't go away and makes you a more complex thinker, or let's say a more tolerant being in this world, which I think is necessary in order to tackle big problems. You have to be open-minded.
You were talking about different cultures being open-minded. Brings me to the name of your studio, Graft. Can you explain to us why you called your company Graft?
We were looking for a name that explains the way we think and we want to act in this world. Grafting comes from botany. It means to graft two different properties, two different plants together in order to have a more robust, more complex result. The idea behind it is you cannot be afraid. We don't have the luxury to be afraid to use the assumed opposite or things we don't like, maybe. You know, we're way past the idea where purism can work. Yeah, graft for us means exactly that. The hybridization of concepts in order to overcome problems we're facing today.
It's a great concept. So this leads me to ask you, this is how you approach your work. What are some of the highlights of your career, in your opinion? Oh.
See, this is where usually somebody else has to talk.
But it's curious
shoulder.
To know, because I'm sure that the critics would maybe point to some things, but maybe there's something that particularly was appealing to you, that you particularly liked working on, something that you found to be your highlight.
We think very broadly. We had 3 offices in 3 different continents. We work on all kinds of typologies, and we're working on all kinds of scales, from product design to city planning, because we think it all, in the end, is integrated in the way we live today. It makes it more intelligent. But saying that, maybe what was interesting for us is that we realized at one point that there's also a different way for an architect to engage with society and to work on solutions that can be systemic, meaning having a far more powerful impact into our society. We started that with a project called Make It Right, which was a non-for-profit organization that we started with Brad Pitt in New Orleans after Katrina. So we started a non-for-profit that would bring back one community. That was the idea. The lower Ninth Ward, which was predominantly black, a poor neighborhood, but people had the house and a small piece of land. So how do you bring back a community? How do you rebuild it, but build it better, safer, affordable, and sustainable? And that's what we try to do. And after 10 years, we had our anniversary 2 years ago, we basically did it, meaning we curated the whole architectural side. We invited other architects and colleagues to come on board, local ones, national ones, international ones, very famous architects. 3 Pritzker Prize winners were part of it. We designed the house ourselves as well, but we curated the whole architectural part. And we realized, doing this with Brad Pitt, who said, it's like, we really have to engage here, will you help me? And we did projects before, so we did, not knowing it would take us 10 years to get there. We realized that as an architect, you can make a difference. So architecture is much more than building a house. It is energy at the same time. It is, how do you finance it? How does it get built? And then what does it matter in terms of culture for a society? Is it the right thing to do? Is it something where we all grow? Because in the end, it's like Vitruve has said 2,000 years ago. There's firmitas, how does the building work as a structure? There's utilitas, it has to serve a purpose, and there's function. And then the third is venustas, that's the cultural part. It has to be beautiful. Beautiful in the way it functions, in the way it stands, beautiful to the eye, so there's dignity, people love it. One reason why, in my opinion, the best building in the world that exists is in Rome, is the Pantheon. And the only reason it survived, even though it was a pagan temple, but it became a church and survived because it's so beautiful.
Speaking of Rome, so we are here in
Yes.
Rome. We're at the German Academy in Villa Massimo, very prestigious location. And you are actually a resident here. Can you explain to us why you are here?
Now, the Villa Massimo is the German Academy. Germany is sending their artists here to study Rome and to be on their own. They can do their projects, whatever they want, whatever they're interested in. And I got lucky that I got selected, as there's always one architect among 10 stipends, and this year it's me.
Yeah. Well, it's a very beautiful location, so you are very lucky. So you said that you are studying a lot about Rome, but in previous conversations we've had, you've also told me you've spent some of your holiday periods in what was once Etruscan areas, and we've had conversations about the Etruscans too. What can you tell me about your studies of the Etruscans?
As fascinating as the Roman culture is, of course you have to understand that they don't just jump out of the box and we're there. It's like, hey, here's Rome. And now everybody's dancing to our rule. No, Rome exists. Rome existed, the Roman Empire grew out of different cultures. Actually, Rome started as a farming culture, not very sophisticated. There were farmers and there were soldiers. They were quite adamant about their virtues and where they wanted to go. In that sense, they were very straight and maybe superior to other cultures in fulfilling, taking what they wanted by force. Another thing about the Roman Empire, though, is they were very smart to also see if somebody was superior in something, but they conquered that kind of culture, they would take it and make it their own. So the Etruscan culture is much older than the Roman culture and much more sophisticated. But the Romans first conquered Etruscan territory, and they took over a lot of the achievements of the Etruscan people. And that has to do with art, and with craftsmanship. The Etruscans were great craftsmen, great sculptors. They were great metal workers. And all of that the Romans took over. So dealing with stone, putting it into an aesthetic form, dealing with engineering, especially water, comes from the Etruscans. And the Etruscans, in a way, being conquered by the Romans, they kind of made their culture being part of the Roman culture. So the Roman culture actually is, in a true sense, a Roman Etruscan culture.
In fact, we from Saturnia Travertini Italia, we have our travertine quarry, which is in what was the heart of Etruscan territory. Our, let's say, our premier product we've actually called Etrusco, just partly because of what you just said. You know, they were enlightened people. But speaking about travertine, how was travertine used by the Romans and also by the Etruscans?
At that time, there are basically three stones for the Etruscan culture, but also for the Roman culture later in a bigger production, as the Roman Empire had a lot of power and means, meaning money, and sources like slaves to do a lot of architecture. But the three stones everything is based on is the tufo, the travertino, and marble. Marble is hard to come by. Marble is not a material that you find in the vicinity here. In the Roman areas, also in the Etruscan areas, not a lot of marble is around. But you find tufo a lot, which is basically comes from old volcanic activity. It's a nice stone, but it's a little softer and not as beautiful, in my opinion. And maybe also in the opinion of the ancients, as they really loved their travertine. And if you look at the biggest buildings, the most famous buildings you can still see in Rome, let's say the Colosseum or the Teatro di Marcello. These are built in the times where the Republican era ends and Imperial time starts. And they are mainly built out of travertine. Not only in the facades as visible material, but as massive blocks. It is a great and grand stone that the Etruscans used a lot. To deal with stone, it was the Etruscans teaching the Romans how to deal with it. Now, travertine is a fantastic material. It's much more pleasing to the eye than tufo, and it's durable and it's hard, almost as marble. But it's, other than marble, it has this warm color to it, which makes it particular. So it's very approachable. It's a stone that you can use for anything, because what you see on the outside, you see also on the inside. Meaning you can cut it, you can form it, you can create sculptures with it, and it's always the same quality of stone. There's no surprise there. If you cut up the stone, it's like, oh, well, its inside's very different. And it's durable. I mean, if you look at buildings today, built 2,000 years ago or older, they're still very pristine. They're great. They're great with the environment. They're great with water. Look at all the fountains of Rome, basically built of travertine, all of them. The Fontana di Trevi looks splendid. Acqua Paolo, splendid. I mean, it's all in travertine. And water in travertine is beautiful, because if you get water on travertine, which is this light yellow, and you get just pure water on it, the water becomes turquoise, becomes a beautiful color of the water. Travertine in water also is a concept that's interesting, that also goes back to the Etruscans, who were great engineers, because they built their cities on mountain tops. They had ingenious hydraulic system to get water through the tufo and through the travertine into their cities. So water and travertine has a long, long history. Till today, I would say, a really well done travertine bathroom is a beautiful thing. That's why one of our first projects, we had the chance to do a bathroom entirely out of travertine. The floor, the walls, so everything worked with the water and travertine. It's a marvelous material that goes way back, but has the same properties today. Nothing changes there.
So when you started speaking about travertine and water there, your eyes lit up. How were you introduced to travertine as an architect?
Well, I saw it in Italy when I was here on travels and when I studied here. Because travertine from Italy is I mean, if you look at the material, there's also travertine in other countries, right? But it's never the same. The travertine from Italy is particular, and especially the travertine in the Etruscan area, that includes Rome, Tivoli, but also, in the area where Saturnia is, very old. But the first time we really worked on it was in Hollywood. We worked with Brad Pitt on his house, on his guest house, and did this bathroom made out of travertino from Italy. And we could work with it in many, many different ways. Very rough, very smooth, with heat, so your feet would know where to stand. It would be a little bit warmer there. There was water. It's like we did the basins and the bathtub out of solid travertino. So that was a beautiful thing to do that we did with him, designing together with Brad Pitt. So yes, that was a great start for a young architect to work with one of the most beautiful materials you can think of, using it with water and understanding how it works. Even sound. If you have a wall of rough travertine that just gets water running down of it, and you get this tickle of water on this material, it's beautiful. If you get water in a bowl, you get this turquoise sensation of the water. It changes in color. Also sound. If you shape travertine in a certain bowl, it's like boom. If you bing it, it has its specific sound. And that's interesting, of course, to relate it to other materials. So we actually were able to form all the appliances, the faucet, the handles, out of bronze. And that was a great combination, which, yes, it's old, but you can use that in very modern ways. And I would say, yes, in a way, it's an antique bath, but it's radically modern.
Well, in fact, that's one of the questions I actually wanted to ask you. So travertine is seen as a classical material in this modern age of ours. Do you see application for it, or is architecture just going towards steel and glass, or do you think there's still place for travertine in modern architecture?
I don't think there's a dilemma there, or there's a contradiction, right? I mean, travertine is beautiful with very clean and man-made materials like steel or glass or bronze. I mean, bronze is older as material, it seems to us, but nevertheless, even I think the virtues, and that's in a way of thinking grafting again. The properties of travertino being associated with ancient buildings and Etruscans in Rome, as a juxtaposition with something very modern, very clean and precise glass and steel, they make each other stronger. It's not an either or. It's not a this or that. It's both at the same time.
A bit like grafting.
It's a grafting, yes. So we like that very much. Definitely there's a place, especially in times where, people in a world that is so dynamic and so fast, a lot of people kind of want to stand back a little bit from time to time as well, and have places that they trust that are not fast. I wouldn't say slow, but that have identity and authenticity. So if you know where your stone is from and using its properties right, it has a moment of authenticity and trust almost, right? Something that people know how to use and know how to apply gives this moment of relaxation in a way. Yet, again, I mean, I study Rome not because I'm a historian of art and architecture. I'm an architect today. It's about these principles of using concepts or material, understanding how it has been used in the past in order to transform it into something into the future. Meaning, yes, there is a great, I think there's a great not only opportunity for material as travertino, which is rare. because it comes from a certain area. It has these properties. It has its history. So it's checked. It's pre-approved in a way. But you can use it in very different and very radical modern ways. I like that very much. If you want to go organic, you can do it. If you're going to go very austere, you can do it. You can do furniture with it. You could do walls with it. You can do sculptures with it. And in times of the computer, which we like to use as a very, very intelligent pencil, you can bring back properties of sculpture, of amorphic shapes into architecture, and travertine is a great material to do that, as we know from history, but you can apply it today because it becomes affordable again, through the computer translated into machinery. And that's a great, for me, that's a great outlook into the future, to use that material in very modern ways.
Great. Well, Lars, thank you very much for your time. We invite you to our quarry in the spring, hopefully to continue this conversation.
Absolutely.
And maybe have a look at some of the different material itself. So thank you again.
Thank you.